Attention. If you owe back taxes to the IRS, watch this urgent message. The IRS is cracking down by hiring 87,000 new agents to garnish your paycheck and put liens on homes and businesses. They can even seize your bank account. The IRS calls it enforced compliance, and now they have the manpower to get you. Penalties and interest on unpaid taxes compound daily. So call One Stop Tax Relief Shop and get the IRS off your back. They're experts in the Fresh Start Initiative, one of the biggest breaks the IRS has ever offered. And no other tax shop gets you more or faster approvals. One Stop Tax Relief has resolved thousands of cases since 2014 and saved clients millions of dollars. Call now for a free consultation. Connect with tax professionals who get the IRS off your back.
Call 800-605-0688. 800-605-0688.
One Stop Tax Relief Shop.
Welcome back to Turnpike Sports. Dave Weishaupt with you. I don't have to tell anyone who listens to this show that the rate of gambling expansion in this country has been amazing. And what is equally as fascinating is how each state deals with gambling within their borders. And an absolutely incredible group that discusses the issue of gambling in this country is the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, which is having their summer meeting July 12th to the 15th in Denver, Colorado. And we're going to find out all about it because on the line we have two members of its leadership. John Ford is a state senator from Indiana, and Delegate Shawn Fluharty is from West Virginia, and they are both on the line with us right now. Senator Ford and Delegate Fluharty, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to it.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure having you guys on. And I got to tell you, working in the gaming industry, I can attest to the fact that both Indiana and West Virginia are great gaming states, and they really bring in great revenue figures every month. So with my first question, I'm going to give you guys a chance to brag about your states a little bit and tell the people who are listening across the country about the gaming industry in Indiana and West Virginia. Senator Ford, let me start off with you and give us an overview of the gaming industry in Indiana.
Yeah, we 14 brick and mortar casinos that started about 30 years ago as riverboats, and we've transitioned to locations closer to interstates. And then in 2019, we added sports wagering. We really have grown quite a bit since we added sports wagering, and we are in the process of adding a Churchill Downs casino, and conveniently enough in my Senate district in the western part of Indiana.
Delegate Fluharty, how about West Virginia? Tell us something about the gaming industry in West Virginia.
Well, we're known as the wild and wonderful state of West Virginia, and I think the gaming industry could be described the same currently. We have sports betting. We actually passed sports betting prior to PASPA being overturned, one of the first states to get in on the ground level. And then we followed it up the next session with iGaming, which I think John's probably a little jealous about that. We have iGaming in West Virginia. And, we have expansive gaming laws, and a very powerful West Virginia lottery regulates and does a great job. And we're now looking at iLottery as the next step for us. And really, at the end of the day, I don't know what we don't have at this point.
I know,
we're gonna
right?
have it all. I mean, you're going to have to come up with some new ideas for West Virginia because we've done everything.
Well, I got to tell you, one of the great things about being an attorney in the gaming industry and also doing this show is I get to talk to a lot of state officials around the country about their states and the issue of gambling. And one of the questions I always ask them is, how much do you pay attention to what other states are doing? Or how much do you speak with people in other states when forming your rules and regulations? And without fail, they all say, yes, we certainly look at other states, what they're doing, and they listen to other states, what they're saying, and any advice they give. That's why I think the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States is so important for the gaming industry in this country. For those who aren't familiar with the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, what is it, and what do you both hope to accomplish through this council?
Well, the council's been around now for a little over 20 years and really was meant to bring legislators from gaming states together to share best practices. Mm-hmm. And, to your earlier point, we do watch each other and what we do. And I am jealous of Shawn in West Virginia having iGaming, that's for sure. But, we're a little competitive, right, as politicians, and
Sure.
we, get together. And really, what I love about it is how we all share, different ideas and what maybe we could have done to make our legislation better, and hopefully help other states, improve on their gaming aspects.
To that point, Dave, I think what Nickel G's brings to the table, if you're a new legislator or one that's held office for years, is that there's no other tool out there in these conferences that you're invited to like Nickel G's. This is driven by legislators. We're in the room together. We're brainstorming, and we're putting together these panels where legislators can learn so much about the gaming industry and what's next, where we're going, and more importantly, how we got here. That's, I think, when I was first elected, which seems like yesterday, but it was back in 2014, and learned of Nickel G's and started attending the conferences. That's what really spearheaded myself and others from West Virginia to embrace sports betting and iGaming and move the legislation. I'm not so sure we could have moved the legislation like we did without having Nickel G's available.
And I want to stress the fact that, and this is the point I love, the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States isn't a Republican organization or it's a Democratic organization. There are people from both parties. You're from different parties. Each of you are different parties. Is the issue of gambling, does that reach across the aisle? Is that such a big issue for a state that Republicans and Democrats can find common ground on this issue?
Yeah, I think so. I think, when we talk about gaming and the proceeds from gaming, they go all over the state of Indiana, and in many states, they spread across local governments. And, I really think when we get together at Nickel G's, parties aside, and we're focused on improving gaming in our states.
Well, I would say generating revenue is green.
Yeah.
It's not red or blue. And that's what iGaming and sports betting, the ability to do just that, and especially iGaming. I think a lot of people have a misconception that sports betting is the huge revenue generator for states, when in reality, iGaming, West Virginia and other states, it's basically 3-1. It takes 3 months of sports betting to equate what 1 month of iGaming brings in West Virginia. So I think getting to the finish line, it's a windy road if you've been in the gaming industry and legislatively how that works, whether you're Republican or Democrat. But at the end of the day, we had full bipartisan support for our legislation for both sports betting and iGaming. Now, I think there are different ways that you get there. Some Republicans may not want to expand gambling in general, right? It's kind of a very conservative issue where Democrats maybe are more into it. But there are so many things you can do with this legislation that I think everybody comes to agreement on. For instance, the consumer protection side, which I think, and hopefully we'll get into that, is the next phase for many states, is to kind of bolster their consumer protection laws that maybe years ago were not thought of when we were reflective and looking back on legislation. So, those are things you can get to the finish line on this issue because it's nonpartisan. In this country, we're very divided right now on many issues, but really gaming and sports betting and iGaming is something where I think you can check off a lot of boxes on both sides of the aisle.
Well, you mentioned sports betting. It's been the big story in the gaming industry for a couple of years now. I'm sitting here in New Jersey, which was ground zero for the court fight that allowed sports betting across the country. I mean, it was such an interesting journey. I mean, first, the professional sport leagues were saying that the worst thing you can do in life is place a bet on sports. And then they said, okay, but you have to give us an integrity fee if you want to do something like that. And now professional sports leagues are making deals with sportsbook operators, and you really can't turn on a game without seeing betting odds and over-unders. I'm curious, how did sports betting progress in your individual states, and did you have unique challenges that your specific state presented when launching sports betting?
Shawn, why don't you start on with West Virginia?
Okay, sure. Well, I can tell you, since we were one of the first states, the leagues came in at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And look, they didn't come into West Virginia because we're a large state, right? We're 2 million people. They came in because of the precedent it would set when we move forward and other states would follow. And when I'm talking about the leagues coming in, they wanted that integrity fee.
Yeah.
They had a meeting at West Virginia Lottery. They hired powerful lobbyists, and they had their one pager that I've shared on social media probably 100 times now of here's what the leagues thought prior to sports betting taking off, right? Integrity fee. We should be able to opt out because this is going to be horrible. We need player protection. And now you have a DraftKings banner on the green monster.
Yeah,
I mean, this is where we're at now. And I knew that was going to happen eventually, but they came in and they wanted to set the precedent. But look, I think Mark Cuban had it right when this went down, when the ruling was overturned, was that he owns the Dallas Mavericks, that basically it probably doubled in value. And he kind of made an off-the-cuff comment about that, and that was telling me, look, you don't need this integrity fee. I mean, we're going to be watching games that we never would have watched before for the entirety of the game, because now we have sports betting in a regulated market that more people are participating in. You're going to make plenty of money off of this. And lo and behold, look at it now.
Yeah.
I mean, they are a partner. The leagues are all in on this, to use the House of Cards reference. They've moved all the chips in the middle of the table, and they love sports betting now. And now almost to the point where they've kind of gone overboard, right? You talk about the advertising side, and really I think that's the next thing is that, okay, wait a minute. They have all these affiliates. They're not necessarily disclosed to the states, and they're running buck wild in this industry without any checks or balances right now. And I think if you talk to the average constituent or consumer out there, that's the pushback, is like, wait a minute, this is maybe a little too much, and maybe we should have some regulation on that side.
Yeah, in Indiana, we followed suit. We obviously watched what was happening in New Jersey and West Virginia and other states before us, and we kind of took a slower path and started with daily fantasy, and then moved to sports wagering in 19. But we also had the same battles with the leagues coming in and really demanding an integrity fee, and it really didn't make sense to a lot of us on a policy standpoint. So they pushed hard, but we pushed back, and we I think passed a pretty good sports wagering bill with some good regulations. But we watched West Virginia and New Jersey, and I think our regulator had 2 months to implement sports wagering, and spent a lot of time with the New Jersey regulators to get it off and running well.
You just mentioned it, and one of the important things that you're going to be discussing at the conference as being held in Denver on July 12th to the 15th is if the regulatory system that is put in place to protect people who bet, and is it keeping up with the new technology in sports betting? I mean, is that the real challenge for states? I want to give you guys an example. I was speaking with a software company that has an app that puts in sports books, which, if activated on your phone, will know which particular game you're watching on television in real time. I mean, and then it will come up with a personalized betting option for you. I mean, I initially thought, oh my God, what a great marketing tool. And then about a minute later, I was thinking, I'm home alone and someone knows what I'm watching on TV. I mean, it kind of felt a little weird listening to that. I mean, but is the regulatory system for sports betting keeping up with technology, in your opinion? And is that the real challenge for the states to keep up with this technology?
Well, I definitely think it's a challenge for states to keep up. And then, with that example you gave, do we license that company? And I think here in Indiana, if I had to do it over again, maybe we would define who would license and how deep we'd go within companies. I think we, from what I hear from vendors and providers, we tend to maybe be on a little heavy-handed on the regulation side, and maybe, having too many people get licensed. But I think definitely technology, and as we move forward into iGaming, is really going to be a challenge. And I know our regulator here in Indiana is pretty concerned about whatever we do, if we move forward with iGaming, that we provide enough revenue for them to keep working on this technology and staying up to date.
Dave, to your point, I think what gets lost in all of this that doesn't get discussed enough is that we're dealing with an addiction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know that you can get addicted to gambling in general, and sports betting is not isolated from that. iGaming is not isolated from that. So it's important that we understand that as this industry evolves and the technology takes off, that we have to empower our regulators to, one, work together with other states. When we first started, you basically have the godfather of regulation in New Jersey and David Rebuck. Yeah. And that guy is phenomenal, right? And if it wasn't for him being able to share information with states like West Virginia, where would we be today, right? So we just had an issue on gambling with the Alabama baseball this week, right?
Sure.
Ohio shared information. Other states shared information. The regulators were on top of it. And it showed that it worked, that regulation works in the industry. Mm-hmm. And we have to keep up with that. And I think moving forward, you're going to see more of a compact-like structure where states are sharing the information with the regulators to keep up with the technology. And on top of that, legislators need to be apprised of what's going on and how the technology is moving, because what the example you just gave is similar to micro betting, which is your in-game live betting. And you're sitting there. We have issues with latency. The NFL just did a deal with YouTube TV. Mm-hmm. So to your example on that particular app, how is that going to work when we have, a 20 to 30 second delay? Yeah. And the app is going to update faster than your television because it's coming in slower. So who has all the benefits there, right?
Yeah,
it's not
I know.
The better. It's not the better. So are we going to have regulatory structure in place where the bets are frozen for that latency period? I mean, there's so many issues that arise as technology moves that that's why you got to come to Nickel G's to learn about these things and work on them in your state. And that's why we have to have a strong consumer protection for the bettors moving forward. And those are the conversations that we need to be having, and that with the fundamental understanding of what we're dealing with here, an addictive product.
It seems that states are really jumping on the sports betting bandwagon and are really accepting of allowing sports betting, especially if the state next to them gets it. So they're really motivated to have sports betting. However, a lot of states are very reluctant to allow iGaming and online casinos within their state. Why do you think that is? And do you think more states in the future will allow online casinos to go live in the coming years?
Well, I think here in Indiana, what we've run into is, I think with sports wagering, everybody knew at their local tavern or their local barbershop, you could bet on sports. I think there's a little disconnect from legislators who aren't involved in gaming, that, there is a black market for gaming in their state, right? We have to admit that it is happening right now with offshore accounts.
Sure.
And that's really been the struggle for me here in Indiana, is to get people to understand that we have, maybe billions of dollars going offshore in casino iGaming.
Well, Delegate Fluharty, you have online gaming in your state. How is it working? Because I know, like you said, online casinos bringing so much more money than sports betting.
Well, John's spot on. I think the first thing you have to do if you're looking to move the legislation is educate your peers. I mean, the average legislator, I was looking this up, we were at a conference a few weeks ago and John was on the panel, is that legislative leadership is generally 60 plus years old. Okay. Leadership. I'm talking how a bill moves, how a bill becomes a law. You need legislative leadership to move it. So they have to have an understanding of what exactly the product is. And I think there's a disconnect by the public and the leadership on this particular issue. I mean, you're looking at a bunch of people who struggle to silence their cell phones in a crowded room, and you want them to understand iGaming and iCasino and how that operates on their phone. So naturally, there's a disconnect. And I think, as John said, everybody understands sports betting. It sucks up all the oxygen in the room. But legislatively, the better product legislatively for the state is clearly iGaming. And until the public gets on board and understands it fully, I feel like the public usually gets on board before the politicians. And so there was a push for sports betting by the public. There hasn't been for iGaming. And the industry has really failed, I think, to kind of connect the two. So it takes a state like West Virginia where we have like the groundswell of legislators who are in the know on it, like myself and others, that are pushing it and educating our colleagues to say, this is important, here's why. And here are the revenue numbers, which I think if you're predicting what's next, right, you're going to see more states move because, one, the COVID money is going to dry up. We know that.
Sure.
It is generating revenue, and we have evidence now from states who have been live for a number of years to show that it's not cannibalizing the casino brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. That's the big worry, right? The casinos come in and say, oh, we're going to lose participants in this market. And no, it grows the market across the board. A lot of individuals who will use their phone aren't going into the brick and mortar now. And a lot of the individuals who are in the brick and mortar aren't suddenly not showing up because they can use their phone. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the evidence that we have. And I think now that we have that evidence and we have this push that kind of is being more embraced, similar to sports betting, I think you'll see some more states come on board. But that, I think, explains the apprehension of why we haven't seen it take off like sports betting.
Another topic you're going to be hitting at the summer meeting is something that's in the news right now, especially in my home state of New Jersey, and that's casino licenses being offered in major urban centers. I know Texas and Georgia are contemplating this now. Like I said, in my home state of New Jersey, the big story is the potential of casinos in New York City. I mean, right now, they're across the river from me in Philadelphia. There are big casinos in the center of Philadelphia, and New Jersey's casinos are tucked away in Atlantic City, which is a Jersey Shore town on a barrier island on the corner of the state. But are retail casinos moving to our larger cities, and what challenges does that present for the states involved in that?
Yeah, I think as gaming has evolved, here in the Midwest, certainly we started out on riverboats, and the joke was always, why along a river? And it was the mafia couldn't swim, right? And that was kind of the joke we said here. But it's, I think it was proven that it didn't work, and we didn't maybe necessarily, maximize the resource. So what we here in Indiana have done is move to casinos closer to interstates. So that's kind of been our first move forward. I think, the conversation when we bring up moving into a more urban space like Indianapolis, folks there want it for the convention business. So when people are in town or for sporting events, they can go and, gamble. But that has been really slow to take on here in Indiana. But I think across the country, we're going to have to look at more urban spaces.
I think what we're seeing now, there's more of a general acceptance in the populace of gaming in general. So it used to be, we got to kind of hide it a little bit, right? It's not going to be in our urban center. It's going to have to be kind of in the back room, like the old gray machines. We got to have it in the back. And same with kind of what has happened with the cannabis industry. You have some states who say, we want these facilities out in the open for everybody to see, just like any other shop. And then you have some states who say, well, we're still going to keep it on the back streets. And I think what you're seeing is now that the general acceptance from the public on this issue is that, okay, let's put it in the population center because it's accepted now. I think that's just a general change in the complexities of gaming. It's like, oh, this is a generally accepted practice. Why are we hiding it in some rural spot? So, West Virginia is not exactly very metropolis. We don't have a lot of big cities, but you look at where we have them now. Charleston's our biggest city. We have one there. Wheeling, where I'm at, in the northern panhandle, sandwiched between Ohio and Pennsylvania. So we have Columbus and Pittsburgh within close driving proximity. We have a casino. Our eastern panhandle, we have a casino. So if you look at our population centers, we have casinos there, and I think other states are moving that way.
And I think Shawn brings a great point. I think gaming really has moved to be another form of entertainment.
Sure.
That people are more accepting of than they were 20 years ago.
Sure, they're going to casinos not even to really gamble anymore because they've evolved with the times. It's an entertainment district. So why would you have the entertainment district where there aren't any people anymore?
Another issue you're going to be discussing, and it's been in the news a lot because of the Kentucky Derby, is the horse racing industry. I mean, here in New Jersey, sports betting was marketed to the state as a way to help the state's horse racing industry. The jury's still out on how much it's helping the horse racing industry, but how do you see horse racing fit into the current landscape of gambling expansion? And really, how can horse racing be included in the expansion of gaming in this country?
John, I'll let you lead.
I think it's a great conversation to have. I think, here in Indiana, obviously the racing has evolved along with the formation of racinos back in 2008, 2010. And that has really helped to grow the horse racing community here in Indiana. As a matter of fact, have actually about doubled in 10 years. But figuring out how to fit them in with sports wagering and iGaming, is something that we're having discussions about, and how do we help them to generate revenue when they really, need people to come to the tracks. But that's something, and I think, that's why we love having these kind of conversations at Nickel G's with other associations, is really to hear what is going on in the horse racing community and how legislators can help.
Dave, I'll give you a great example. I think sports wagering is going to help revive that industry. And last night, as I was hopping on one of my apps. I do participate in sports betting, obviously, and hopped on one of my apps, and what popped up was essentially, hey, the Kentucky Derby's this week.
Yep.
Why don't you click here, and here's a free bet. How they try to bring you in. Point being, years ago, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not being captured in that market, and I'm not seeking it out because I'm not an avid horse racing fan. However, if I am now participating in the NBA playoffs and betting on that, and I see this, I'm more likely to do so. So point being, it's going to help revive an industry that I'm not so sure is very popular right now.
And I think it could help bring, a younger demographic to racing. Sure. And I think, the horse racing industry needs to, in my opinion, think about how to modernize. Do you go to fixed odds? Do you, change some of the formats? But I think some of those discussions are, top of mind in the horse racing community.
Now, these are only some of the topics you'll be discussing at the summer meeting of the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, being held from July 12th to the 15th. What are some of the other topics you'll be discussing?
Well, I think one thing that I think we're really excited to be offering is a, Gaming 101 segment. The first morning will be, it's a program design. Shawn and I will be leading it that is designed for new legislators. So we're going out and trying to communicate with them across the country and bring them into Denver and really provide the basics on gaming. And then, that's something that we used to offer and we haven't the past few years, but this year we're bringing that back. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, to John's point, I think that's the number one thing. If you're saying, what are we going to have that other conferences do not offer? It's that right there. You're going to have two legislators, myself and John, leading a discussion in a room full of legislators talking about, here's how you get it done. Here are the mistakes we made. Here's what we learned along the way. So you're going to have legislators who are on states on the brink of passage or states that have failed to pass. And we ask them, what's the holdup? What's the issue? So, that's a workshop that I think you're not going to get anywhere else if you're a legislator. And on top of that, we're going to have all these meetings with important people in the industry that you may not meet elsewhere. We have a responsible gaming panel. As I said earlier, I believe that's the big discussion for legislators moving forward in this country for all states, not just those who are on the brink of passage, but even West Virginia and Indiana, where we're looking back and going, maybe we made some mistakes along the way now that we have evidence and data to go off of. So these discussions are going to be led by not just legislators, but leading people in the industry, regulators from many states that have been at the front lines of this from 2018 on, who can speak to it and say, here's how you need to move forward, or here's what we would do if we could go back again. I think it's something that's you're not going to get in many conferences, especially the workshop where you're going to get the one-on-one that's invaluable moving forward if you're a prospective legislator or current legislator.
I just want to point out again that this summer meeting of the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States is going to be held from July 12th to the 15th, and you can check out their website at nclgs.org. And I'm assuming that would be the best place to go if you want to register for the event. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And I might add, we do provide some scholarships for legislators to attend the event. So that is something that, again, not a lot of conferences do, but we, it's one of our goals is to try to get as many legislators as we can to learn about gaming.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to ask you both, what do you see as the major issues for the gambling industry in the coming year? What do you think that your individual state's major issue will be with regard to the gambling industry?
I think Shawn's, hit it on it a few times. I think consumer protections. I also think we'll have a lot more discussions on player protections, and what are we doing with sports wagering and our regulators to support players? Because as we know, there seems to be a lot of social media bullying of players, and that seems to be coming to the surface a little more. And, to Shawn's point about maybe some things that we would have liked to add in the legislation. And I think those two topics will be ones that states will be talking about.
Yeah, Dave, you can kind of look now what states are doing. So Maryland just passed legislation that's related to these affiliate relationships and independent evaluators of these affiliate relationships related to advertising in sports betting, which I think there are no checks and balances, there are no guardrails in place, and you start looking. We've regulated virtually every aspect of sports betting except that area, and that's the area that's running rampant right now. So I think consumer protection related to that, we need to know that everything that's being advertised in these affiliate relationships with touts and influencers, that it's legitimate. And if you're going to license a sports book, you want that byproduct of the license and what they're telling the public to be legit, and that needs to be regulated. We've seen it in Maryland. West Virginia moved similar legislation through the House, and we ran out of time in the Senate. And I think other states are going to come on board with that. We had great testimony from a company named SharpRank that actually came to Nickel G's previously and said, hey, look, here's the data we're able to pull on this, and we feel like this is the area where there's no real regulation or checks or balances in place. And you start looking at a legislator and going, well, yeah, that makes sense. We really didn't touch on that back when we passed sports betting because we didn't know at the time. We didn't have the evidence that we have now. And to the player protection side, I had legislation that was moving related to the issue of these players and coaches, referees who are getting threatened on a regular basis. You should have the ability as a regulator to pull. It's not a fundamental right to sports bet, right? It's not like we need to go through a big legal process to pull your ability to sports bet, especially if you're threatening a player. And those are things that are simple that at the time when sports betting was passed, many states like West Virginia and others didn't realize was going to kind of flow from it. So I think that's the next wave. The next thing is consumer protection for those who are participating in the sports themselves, and then the better on what they're seeing from these sports books through these affiliate relationships that don't necessarily have to be disclosed currently to regulators and really have no checks or balances in place.
Senator John Ford and Delegate Shawn Fluharty from National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, thank you so much for coming on and talking about some of the major issues facing states with regard to the gambling industry. And I want to remind everyone that the summer meeting for the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States is being held from July 12th to the 15th in Denver, Colorado. And you can also check out their website at nclgs.org. Senator Ford and Delegate Fluharty, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about it.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you. Have a great weekend.
And that'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on the Turnpike.